John Croyd, Cranston, Jack Braun, Captain Flint, Brain Trust, Earl Sanderson, Silver Helix, Chop Chop, Young Droll, Stopwatch, Will-O-Wisp, Turtle, and Xavier Desmond. Hello, welcome to Card Table. My name is Jason, and this week I'm presenting part 2 of my conversation with Greg O'Driscoll, where we focused on Volume 9 of Wild Cards. If you didn't watch part 1 of the conversation, I definitely recommend that you do that, and then or watch this one first. Either way, both conversations, even though they're focused on Volume 9, they also just kind of, there's a lot of talk just about the series in general, and I think Greg just has some great takes on the series about some of the themes that the authors explore, and some of the character arcs, and what the authors might or might not have had in mind when they were first crafting these books. So I always really enjoy listening to him talk about this stuff. I think he's just got some great insights. So I'm very honored to be able to share some of those on this YouTube channel. So without further ado, here is part 2 of me and my pal Greg chatting. Is there something about, and I'm kind of going back to when I read it as like a 12-year-old, which was maybe too young to be reading something like that, but
yeah,
the combination of the brutality of it with what's a kind of, when you summarize it, is kind of absurd, like his grandpa becomes a teenage girl and then he rapes her and impregnates her with his own.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
his own cousin.
I think like there's a lot of crazy and absurd things that happen in Wild Cards, and it's up there. It's right up there among like the not even top 10. It's probably like one of the top 3 like craziest things to ever happen. Right. But I think that there's like an ickiness to it. There's just like a squick factor to the whole thing, and I think that that it makes it hard to like appreciate the other elements of the story. And it's not just like he becomes a teenage girl, it's like he becomes a teenage girl and gets pregnant. It's like it's unwed teenage mother, MTV show times like 1,000. So there's a lot of weirdness like going on there, but I think that thematically within what they were trying to do with Tachyon, I won't say it's appropriate, but like it's within that framework of this kind of redemption arc. And then on top of all that, I mean, if you want to get like kind of hoity-toity like literary guy about it, isn't there always kind of a lot of squicky incestuous stuff that happens with the gods? And I mean, and even with the whole if Blaise is the Mordred to Tachyon's King Arthur, there's already kind of like this built-in incestual component, which is totally disturbing and can be triggering to people. And I wouldn't blame anyone for being triggered by something like that, especially if it happened in their own lives, because that's the whole point. It's sort of like, I don't know if like Snodgrass was just trying to outdo everybody else or whatever, but it kind of makes Blaise one of the most evil and worst villains in the entire thing. I mean, as long as we're rating things with like top 5 and top 3, he's kind of up there with the Astronomer. He's a really nasty piece of work. And it definitely put like a negative spin, I think, on the entire this triad of books and stories. But I don't know, it's there's a lot of great stuff in there though. I mean, like I said, we get Captain Trips, we get to see his other like personalities. Kind of there's this period where, again, going back to that fracturing and coming together, was it in 8 or in 9 where he hadn't been using his powders to become them in so long that they had all kind of faded into the background and become like this one sort of gray anomalous figure that was just constantly criticizing him? And then
I think that's a 9.
Right. And then he gets the materials to start making his powders and stuff from bloat again, and kind of experiences this rebirth of power. And we get to see Cosmic Traveler, who's kind of a creep and a lech. Like we already knew that a little bit, but like there's some inappropriate groping at one point when one of the female jumpers is in someone else's body, and he's like, oh, here, let me help you put your body up where it won't get like bothered. And so there's a lot of inappropriate stuff happening in these stories. But that Captain Trip story was really exciting to me, because there's a little bit of like cat and mouse with like Blaze pretending to still be his friend and still be nice, although that just speaks that Mark is a wonderful, lovely, sweet dude. And it just shows how, like, he's just he's still a little bit too naive. Like, how can anyone not tell that Blaze has kind of gone to the dark side by now? He's walking around in his leather jacket with his braided ponytail, like kicking people's asses on like the beach of the rocks, hanging out with these criminals. I mean, he tells Mark at one point, like, oh yeah, the straight world turned against me. It's like, okay. Your handicapped daughter, so I mean, logically, how much of a there probably hasn't been that much of a change. He was a bad seed from the get-go, but I love that sort of cat and mouse thing. I love where Mark's got to rescue his daughter, and this is even more so than going on the run, and he's finally truly underground. I mean, now he's like actively breaking the law. He's like fighting with cops and stuff and breaking into facilities. And then going back to the Turtle, you have this great JJ Flash and like Turtle kind of battle, and I mean, that's the Marvel thing, right? It's like, but this isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't like, what do you mean you're not a villain? They both know that they're supposed to be heroes, and Turtle knows that like JJ Flash is breaking the law, but it kind of turns into this whole like family trumps love of law, and I don't know, man, that was a really great one. And, you bring Durg into the mix, and perhaps going back to that Takesian sort of like disdain for humanity or whatever. But I love the thing where, poor naive Mark is like, well, you can help me, Durg, but it might mean like breaking the law. Yeah. And Dirk just laughs and laughs. He's like, "What?" Right. He's like, "I ain't worried about your human laws. What are you talking about? Let's go get your kid, man." And Dirk was pretty cool. Like, although one of my favorite funny images in my mind is when it talks about how, like, in the action movies, there's always like aiming at. Well, then, you tell it then, because you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, it's very much a Milanism. He loves to do that whole, like, in the movies, he's done it a couple times, like when you get punched and knocked unconscious, like that happens in the movies all the time. But in real life, if you get knocked unconscious by a blow to the head, you're going to wake up with something wrong with you. But yeah,
he'll be in the hospital with a concussion.
Right. But yeah, the one where, like, in the movies, you always see people with two guns as if they can aim two guns at two different people, which nobody in real life can, but Durg can.
But Durg can. Yeah. But see, this is what I love about it. Durg can. So what that means is that the Takesians genetically engineered Morax to where each of their eyeballs can go in a different direction.
I had never really pictured it that way.
If they ever do a comic, I want to see that panel where like Durg's looking here and here.
Yeah, for some reason, it's so funny that you bring that up, because I literally just I saw that in a comic that I was looking at last night. Someone shooting two guns, and that came into my head. But for some reason, it never occurred to me that for that to work, I'm just picturing him like really so fast.
Durg doing the old chameleon eyes thing, like here and over there.
Yeah, I'm picturing his whole head doing that, but yeah, it would have to be.
I don't know.
You're right. That'd be a great image.
For whatever reason, I know it's not supposed to be I mean, it is kind of funny, that line, but a Morak can.
It's supposed to be more of a badass, funny line.
Right. It's badass, but it tickles me. I laugh every time I read it, because that image immediately pops into my mind. But
that's hilarious.
And this is the last time that Durg is good for a bit. He does ultimately, and this goes back to that whole thing of, tribulation and redemption. Durg, he's not used to being free. It's weird. It's weird. Like, I'm genetically engineered to be like a loyal attack dog. And if you don't make me attack people, I just go and I find someone else that's going to make me attack people. It's, I mean, how much of that is bred into the bone? How much of that is, acculturated? How much does he just think that he's like that? Or did the Takesians literally genetically engineer these guys to have some kind of, something in their cortex and some part of their brain? I've got a, like, I have this strong protective instinct, And like, so I'm genetically engineered to where I kind of like attach myself to people and then I murder anyone that looks at them the wrong way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's possible, presumably, for the Takesians to do that. But again, it goes back to that whole, is it brain? Is it biology? Is it culture? You know, and I feel kind of bad for Dirk. I wanted him to kind of break away from, I wanted him to be more of this sort of, he's like the buff Jean-Claude Van Damme Takesian, you know,
Right.
and I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything for how it ends up with Dirk, but you know, he does some bad stuff. He does some good stuff. And, you know, I like Dirk. I don't know why, you know.
Well, there may be a way to redeem him in a new generation. Someone on Facebook just brought this up in the Facebook group. The Kevin Andrew Murphy created a character who seems like he most likely is the illegitimate child of Derg.
Really? Really? Oh
Yeah,
man.
you remember that? One of the Jokertown boys.
Oh, you see, I thought that they were saying that he was the illegitimate child of Starshine because he looked like
Oh,
Starshine. You know,
oh,
but it would be so much cooler if it was Dirk. I mean,
I think yeah. I can't remember now. There's a line in there like when they actually describe
yeah,
what he looks like, because everyone is like, oh, he probably
yeah,
is Starshine's kid, but when they actually describe his features, I think they describe him as being kind of elfin, and he's so
that would be great. I would love that. I mean, because obviously behavior, you know, personality wise is going to be very much different from Dirk, but that would be nice that some portion of Dirk somehow is still knocking around in the wild card universe. You know, and
yeah,
it's funny because jumping ahead to Double Solitaire, you know, when he shows up there, one of the kind of mean female Morak is like, "Why did you come back?"
yeah,
And he's
yeah,
like, "Oh, well, I heard that you were available for breeding." So obviously, the idea of having kids is not necessarily far from Dirk's mind. I mean, I think he was just saying that just to kind of throw her off balance, but
right,
you know, maybe there's a little bit of truth in there. You know,
yeah,
like I like that.
and
I
it's
hope
yeah,
Murphy does something with that. That would be cool. I could see that
yeah. I hope they
because
bring it back. It would be interesting too, because if he has the whole longevity like Blaze did, or Takesians in
right.
general, but even half Takesians like Blaze have this sort of, so he could, even if it takes another 10 years to get to
I
him.
didn't notice that. See, that's good. Good eye, man. That's why that eye for detail.
Uh,
That's good.
it probably was like on the third reading that I got it, but um,
I
but
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's nice to think about, isn't it? That Dirk got
Yeah.
on with one of those like man hating women. Do you remember
Oh,
this?
it's like the thing is that like, you know, what I love about wild cards is it is generational, you know, and they're, you know, and it takes these comic book things. And this is the thing, you're never going to see Franklin Richards grow up. You
Right.
know, you never, you know, these kids and these kind of, you know, like the New Mutants are pretty much always going to be teenagers or young adults, you know, and it's just one of those things where to have these, you know, descendants of characters, you have to have alternate universes and people traveling back from the future. Oh, don't you know me, mom and dad? Well, oh,
Right,
what's
right,
that?
right.
You haven't even conceived me yet? Well, not to spoil anything, but don't buy condoms. You know, I mean, like it doesn't happen in the comics, but in the books you get to see this, and that's one of the virtues and one of the rewards of being like a long time reader. I
Yeah.
think they don't do it a ton. You know, I mean, we haven't had like the illegitimate love child of Jack Braun or anything pop up. And then of course you also have these characters where they deliberately Drummer Boy, didn't he deliberately get a vasectomy because he didn't want to father any children? He didn't want anyone to be a joker like him.
Uh, did he? Possibly, probably.
I think he did. I think that was mentioned at one point, but you know, so you're not going to see a lot of it, but when it happens, when it pops up, I love seeing stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed the Captain Trip stuff. I like seeing those characters kind of that's just a really good arc overall, you know, like through for the lifetime of the character, you know, and the use that was gotten out of them. And I feel like I don't know if there was ever a plan to reuse him again, but I feel like Vic Milan seems like hopefully he got to say what he wanted to say with that character before he passed away.
Yeah.
And for those that haven't read these books, there's a lot of great stuff to come. You know, like I feel like there's a lot of really cool material for that character that's going to pop up that in a lot of ways, a lot of the groundwork is being laid for, you know, right in this like early stuff with him breaking away and kind of, you know, I can't be an ace in America anymore kind of thing.
Right.
And, you know, that it manifests in some interesting ways. But
Yeah, it's interesting how much.
Croyd.
Uh,
Oh no, go ahead.
just while we were talking about how like the original 15 books are sort of like with it
Yeah.
occupy our minds, but just how much Captain Trip kind of takes over the second half of those 15, where after
Well,
showing up only in the first two, at least significantly,
he makes up for lost time. Absolutely.
suddenly
Yeah.
he's like Mr. Wildcards in that second half.
I kind of love it. And, I don't know. I think that like maybe they were making up for lost time. Maybe they just realized the potential of the character, or maybe Vic Milan, because I don't know what a lot of the behind the scenes processes are. So maybe he just advocated more strongly for his character to be more involved in the stuff that was coming up. I mean, Captain Trips isn't necessarily a gang war kind of character, and there was a lot of that going on, but I feel like there were things that probably could have been said because drug use is so intimately tied up with his character, and you can't have a gang war with like the mafia and the shadow fists and not have drugs be a component of it. I mean, uh, Lazy Dragon, one of the first things, like when Lazy Dragon's in book 8, is he delivers drugs to the rocks. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff going on, but I don't know. There's a lot of cool stuff. I love the buddy action between Shad and Croyd.
Yeah,
Croyd, and it's funny because it's like the Croyd that I love and the Croyd that I think most people think of is kind of this dangerous Croyd. He's cool. He's always got some kind of funny quip. He's got his little bolt holes and hideaways and stuff. And, it's like, don't mess with him. He'll break your neck or electrocute you or whatever. And he's a pink bat mostly in this book. He's a giant pink bat,
yeah,
and like very, very briefly during one of the attacks on the rocks, like he wakes up as some kind of like armor plated, like armadillo kind of thing. But it's only mentioned like in the background in passing. So, Freud's mostly a giant bat that eats bugs in this book. But it's an interesting change of pace for the character. I think being that Shad is kind of an ass kicker in and of himself, you know what I mean? It might have been like overkill to have both of them be these, high powered, like, killing machines.
for sure. Yeah, they seem to. I mean, would it be fair to say that's another thing that characterizes like kind of the ladder of the 15, that they really leaned into Croyd's Joker forms?
Oh yeah,
He
yeah,
was
definitely.
more as a Joker. Like in book 8, he's like the guy with like the beak.
Yep,
Right?
yep.
And 9, of course,
Mm-hmm.
he's the bat, and then in 12, he's the lizard. So
Mm-hmm.
he
Yep.
becomes a camel at one point. A lot of
Yeah.
animal
A
forms.
six-legged camel.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like it seems like more Joker forms than Ace forms at a certain point. They seem to lean into that.
Well, I like that because I think that's the thing. Story-wise, usually when you saw him, even if there was some sort of minor detail, the faceted eyes of the one form, the
Yeah,
albinism of Typhoid Croyd, etc., it just seems like they mostly focused on the ace forms and the ace powers. Although, admittedly, like the first one he woke up as, he was covered in those weird fiber optic hairs that changed color or whatever. But yeah,
yeah,
like that's how he made himself invisible or whatnot.
right.
But like, yeah, they definitely, it was much more ace 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 earlier on, and then yeah, but I like that because Croyd is, he's part of the wild card community, but he's part of the Joker community too. And he's always kind of not had trouble associating with the Jokers. He doesn't seem to, he's not even disgusted by him or anything. I mean, this is the guy that was like hanging out like with Snot Man, like, oh man, I feel bad for Snot Man. And
Right.
he's like the Joker that other Jokers kick the shit out of. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So,
yeah. Croyd just kind of says, "I've been worse myself." So
right. Yeah. I've been covered in slime. It's no
yeah,
big deal. Come on. And, so I love Shad. I really, that friendship, I love that it comes to fruition later, and it's kind of founded in this book. The escape from Governor's Island, the shark hunt, all that stuff. Like that is all because of this, and that's one of the reasons why I like these books. It's one of the reasons why I think they get a bad rap because so much groundwork is laid for things that are going to come up like later on. And I like that. I like those rewards for the long-term reader, definitely.
yeah. And really, the Shad story in 9, besides laying foundation for later, is a reward in itself because it
Yes.
off the whole mystery of why is Grave or why is
Why does Will Walker?
Grave mold. Why would an ace pretend to be a Joker and all that? That's another long game they played where it's like, yeah, why?
We see, but I love that. I mean, that's again that, and you pointed that out in some of your earlier videos, like these little seeds that get laid, and you know, I suppose the nature of the book industry and writing and who's available for what at what time and who pitches the correct story to get included in a book, you know, it's long play kind of stuff. You might not ever get a chance to pick up on some of these things, or it might not happen for 5-6 books, but when it happens, it's so worth it, man. It's very much worth it. And he's just a cool character. He has cool powers, and not to belabor the point, similar to Croyd, he has these little bolt holes and hideaways, and you know, he's always an ace, of course, but you know, except when he was pretending to be Grave Mold, he was supposed to be a Joker, but you know, he just smelled bad, you know. But you know, like I like that. I like that, you know, there is a certain similarity to the characters, and Shad is just he was just really cool. And you know, he gets done dirty in the next book. Or wait, no, I'm getting off on the numbers because Double Solitaire was before Dealer's Choice, right?
Double Solitaire, you mean? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, he's done dirty in Dealer's Choice, but you know, it doesn't matter because you can't stop the guy. He just, right. You know, that's part of it. It goes back to that's the fusion thing where, you know, he's like melded all these broken and disparate parts of himself. And it's like, you know, I'm not Mr. Grave Mold. I'm not Neil Langford. I'm not No Dice. I'm not, you know, Black Shadow. I'm Shad. I am who I've decided who I am. And that, to me, for as horrible as some of the other stuff that happens in the book is, that's like super empowering to me. You know what I mean? Like he gets jumped at one point, and the guy's like, well, I like this body. I like these powers. I like being you. And he's like, no, I'm me. Yeah. And if I can't be me, I'm going to kill you. Right. Because, you know, I finally have figured out who I am, and you're not taking that from me. It's like the whole opposite of the Tachyon thing. You know, it's like, I know who I am, and this is who I'm going to be. And I'm going to, you know what, he had like an AK-47 or something. And and he shoots his own body, and, right. You know, admittedly in the shoulder, you know, he's playing a little cagey here, and that's just what makes Black Shadow, you know, Shad, such an important character to me. You know, he was kind of the opposite of what was going on and what was happening to a lot of the characters in the book. And it made him a very heroic figure. He's the one that rescues Tachyon from the rocks, you know? So, and in addition to that, we got to mention this tidbit, of course. Black Shadow used to be an Egyptian Freemason.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love that they dropped that in there. He's been there. I mean,
right. But the thing is if anyone ever wanted to do it, they could always work in like backstory to where he was planning to do to them what he does to doesn't he like usually infiltrates the gang, finds out what they're doing, turns them against each other, you know, like kind of a Yojimbo kind of thing. We're just going to get them all to shoot each other, you know. And maybe he was planning on doing that to the Freemasons, you know, who knows? You know, it does give like a slightly sinister cast to the character. I was like, wait a minute, you were an Egyptian Freemason?
Right.
Like, weren't those the guys that were like ritually sacrificing hookers? I mean, all right, you know, let's explain, you know, and he doesn't have to because it was just used to gain an advantage over Kafka, you know, to like kind of introduce a shred of doubt to get Kafka to hesitate killing him. But you can't just say stuff like that without explaining it, Shad. You know, come on now. Yeah, but maybe that'll come nice.
Now that a lot of the newer books are kind of doing stories set in the past, it'd be nice to see it. Shad will show up again during his prime years, back when he was in his prime.
And the Shad versus Durg fight, another one of the great fights in that book. That was a great fight. I mean, you know, so yeah, I'm gushing. I don't care. The books are problematic. There's a lot of awful stuff in them, and you know, there's all these outmoded concepts and terms, and it was written in the 80s. What do you want? Everybody was probably doing a bunch of coke. I don't know. But there are just some stuff that is just slam bang good stuff in these books. And, you know, I think that anybody that like read them and was like, oh my God, I can't believe I read the whole thing. Maybe you owe it to yourself to check it out again. Maybe flip over the stuff you don't like. I mean, that's the virtue of the wild card series. I regularly, when I reread these books, like, I'm not feeling this story, so I flip through it, or I just make sure that like I'm not missing some key bit, and you just skip the stuff you don't like and fast forward to the stuff you do. And it's a lot like comics in that way. You can just you don't have to read every issue. You can just kind of catch up and figure things out from context,
That's true. Yeah. Well, I even found, me and my chronological readings. Like,
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Are you going to publish an article on Tor or something? Because I
maybe.
love how you lay things out like that.
Yeah, if I could get a good angle on it. But with book 9, I realized that sort of chronologically, all the Tachyon stuff should rightly be more kind of bundled near the end rather
Yeah,
than
like front loaded. Yeah, yeah.
And so I read it that way, and it to me it worked a lot better. It kind of compartmentalized all that horrible stuff that you
Get
have.
all the horrible stuff out of the way early on. If you
Yeah,
can make
yeah,
it through these first few chapters, you'll be okay.
yeah, and then you can kind of read a solid run of the more heroic or redemptive moments or
Yeah,
satisfying comic book fights like Turtle versus JJ or Dirk versus Shadow. Kind of
I love it. I
all
love all that stuff. Yeah, Turtle versus Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Yeah.
You
So it made
know,
it kind of a better experience of book 9, where it was easier to appreciate like what you're talking about, like all the good stuff that's in there that sometimes gets
yeah.
because people are like, oh, here we come back to Tachyon getting raped again. And it's like,
Well, it was a strange choice the way that they parceled it out, but maybe they thought, and this is the thing, we're judging all of this by virtue of hindsight.
right.
Maybe they thought that if it was all front loaded like that, it would be way too overwhelming. I mean, admittedly, it's being edited by George R.R. Martin, who obviously has never shied away from a horrible thing happening to a character like ever. But maybe like pitching it to the publishers, it's kind of like, it's a hard sell. Yeah, we're going to begin the first several chapters of this book with some violent rapes. I mean, that's that's a hard sell. You know what I mean? So maybe they thought that if they spaced it out, it would be like less overwhelming or less distasteful. I don't know, but damned if you do, damned if you don't with that kind of thing. I appreciate the risks that they took storytelling wise, but I don't know that there's a good solution to that. But
Exactly.
Superpowered fights, I'm there for it.
Right. I think another thing too, for me anyway, was the experience of reading them as they came out, because, well, like with volume 8, you get to the end of volume 8, nothing's really been resolved, and then you wait like, I don't know, a year and a half for volume 9. And then so I remember reading volume 9 and thinking like, I might get to the end of this and Tachyon's still going to be trapped and getting raped, like, and then I'm gonna have to wait another year to finally get out, like I remember like that being like legitimately uncomfortable to read. Like I can't get to the end of this and not have her be free, because that's gonna be too. Now, like when I read it, knowing that it's gonna end with her getting free and knowing what happens in book 10 with the redemption and healing, it's like it's easier. It's
definitely
not less horrible or horrifying in the moment of reading it, but it's.
The suspense was terrible. Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, it was almost too much for me. And again, I was young, so.
Well, I mean, not for nothing. I was probably only a few years older when I was reading them as they came out, and I mean, it was pretty brutal going. And it's the kind of thing where at that time, I'm like, wow, what you reading there, Greg? Because books were still cool, right? They're still cool, right, kids? Books are cool. But at the time, my buddies are like, oh, what are you reading there? And trying to explain the series to them. And like, I just remember reading like some of the stuff in 8 and 9. And when people would ask me about the books, I would just tell them about the premise of the whole series. Because it's sort of like, this is not necessarily where you like want to jump into the deep end of the pool with this kind of stuff. Like there's definitely kind of a process throughout the books where they kind of put their toe in the water with like having more and more like really horrible things occurring over the space of like several books. And like, because you got to remember, like most of my buddies at the time, they're like reading Star Wars expanded universe novels. So, they're not prepared for this kind of stuff. It's like, however evil you think them guys are in those other books, you're not ready for this. Go read the first 3 books. It's tough because I loved the books and I wanted more people to read them, but it's just one of those, it's a question that comes up in the comic book community. It's like, well, if you were going to have someone read comics, what's the first comic you would have them read? It's like, well, if you're going to have someone read Wild Cards, it damn sure ain't going to be volume 9.
Yeah, probably not.
That is not the first one you were going to put in their hands, but I've had a great time, man. I love talking about this stuff. I hope you've got some good material to like do an episode with, because this is just great to me. I feel like before we run out of time, because I see the timer,
Oh, you got
I would be remiss to not mention how much I love that some of the jumpers are named after Frank Zappa songs.
Which ones?
Molly Bolt is named after one, and Susie Cream Cheese is named after one. I don't think Susie Cream Cheese is specifically name checked until volume 10.
Yeah.
11. Or no, not 10, 11. You see, that's where the whole trilogy kind of thing gets so tricky, because my brain kind of jumps immediately to Dealer's Choice and the awesome, battles and stuff there. And I keep like, oh yeah, the whole space opera thing with Double Solitaire. So, right.
So but I think, because is Molly Bolt has another meaning too? Like it was the name of like an author or a
I don't know, but I mean, a Molly Bolt is a fastener. I used to do like construction and electrical work, and a Molly Bolt is like something that you punch into a wall so that you can so that you can mount things to a wall. I don't know particularly why they chose that. I mean, now I'm gonna have to double check and make sure it's a Frank Zappa song, but a Molly Bolt is like it's something that you use to mount stuff to a wall. It's just a weird name, it's like naming a character Paige Turner.
Yeah, I think right. I'm trying to think of other examples now, but I think when I googled it, I think there's like some feminist author maybe who that's their pen name.
Oh, well, I mean that's entirely possible.
But it may have come.
I would definitely be remiss if I did not mention the foreshadowing, of course, because it was kind of like towards the tail end of volume 8. Definitely with the end of like Devil's Triangle and the stuff with Blaze and Tachyon, it was kind of obvious where things were going a little bit.
Sure.
And I kind of thought that, not the Kelly thing, but I thought that Tachyon would wind up in Molly Bolt's body, because when she goes to shake Blaze's hand, he like ignores her and doesn't shake it. And specifically in the text, it mentions that she stares down at her hand like she's surprised to see it at the end of her arm. And then later on in volume 9, when Tachyon's jumped and punches Blaze in the face, Tachyon is surprised because, wait, there's a hand at the end of my arm, because of the hand that like got cut off by shaking hands with Mackie Messer back in the Ace in the Hole.
That's it.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of little callbacks and kind of stylistic, or thematic like connections there.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I wonder about what the intention was, because that's
if she's named after a feminist author, what are you going to do? Insult the author by having like a male character inhabiting a character's body that's named after a feminist author getting like violently abused and by like some rapist? I mean, maybe they kind of like, let's take a step back from the abyss, guys. Like that's not like the wisest choice. You should definitely research that, because I'd like to know if there is some kind of significance to that name. That would definitely explain to me why they didn't go that route. Because to me, I felt like that was very much like, oh, she looked at the end of her hand like, oh, what's my hand doing there? And then later to have that callback with Tachyon, that I don't know, that seemed significant, but it also seemed like sort of a path not taken writing wise.
So now I'm curious, if Susie Cream Cheese is named after Frank Zappa song in the real world, are there Frank Zappa songs in the Wild Cards world? Because Frank Zappa is not a musician, right?
Right. Yeah. They don't get fully, but he does wear a turban like he did on the cover of Chic Your Booty. So, I mean, as strange as it sounds, I could almost see like Frank Zappa still having some kind of like musical inclination, even though he's like a general in the army. Okay. I could definitely see like his command staff being forced to like listen to his like oddball musical stylings when they're supposed to be having like attack ops mission or something. Like, I thought that we were going to discuss how we were going to attack the rocks. Well, we are, but first I got this little song that I got called Joe's Garage. I want to play it for you. Like, oh, wait. So, all right. In the Wild Card universe, Ed Sullivan? Does he exist? Like,
I think
have they ever mentioned him having a show or anything like that?
uh, I I mean possibly. Why do you ask?
Well, because Frank Zappa first appeared on television on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he did a very oddball musical performance with I can't remember. I want to say it was like dinnerware and like glasses full of water and stuff. And he played this wonky, kind of strange musical Frank Zappa sounding song as like a talent as a young man. And Ed Sullivan very famously was like, "Oh, young man, I don't know what you just did, but never do it again." And supposedly this like traumatized Frank Zappa and almost made him like not become a performer, and kind of like set the tone for him becoming like a very not commercial, not traditional, musical artist. So like maybe if he never got on the Ed Sullivan Show, that's why he became a general or something like, I mean, just some sort of causality sequence where something happened, and that's why he's a general now instead of a musical performer.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We got we got to research that one, man.
Nice. So I'm trying to think. Is there anything else? Do we want to talk at all about? I guess we only have a few minutes. Is there anything we want to say about Chalk Talk? She's one of the striking features.
Oh wow, yeah. Chalk Talk has a great power. I love alternate universes. I love dimension hopping and all of that kind of premise, and the idea that, and of course, Bloat wants to protect her because he's an artist too, and her power is kind of similar to his in that like this dream world sort of thing, but hers accesses these other dimensions through art, which I think is really just kind of a beautiful message anyway, that like art accesses these other places that we can go to. But wow, but you see, this is the thing. This all goes back to the whole wild card problem with like female characters, and because her tongue was cut out. I mean, she's been like horribly abused, and Bloat doesn't get into specifics, but obviously he kind of knows something. I can't remember if he said her mind was sort of like opaque to him or hard to read, but he felt bad for her, and he was like, no one will ever mess with her or touch her while she's on the rocks, and I mean, obviously, her and Shad get together. Another one of these problematic older male character, younger female character couplings that occur in this book. Because you have Captain Trips and Casey Strange, and then you have Shad and Chalk Talk. But I feel like she's got like the potential to open up so many other story opportunities within the wild card universe. I'd love for her to come back, but I mean, she's probably on the rocks wherever they went. I don't know.
Yeah. Although she probably could get off the rocks very easily.
Yeah, but she would probably be one of the only ones that could. But of course, it's also, not to get ahead of the game, but it's also implied that never been good with the pronunciation. Karen, is that how you?
I also don't know how to
Chiron. Yeah. Chiron, is that how you say? I don't know. Like, but it's also implied that somehow he can move back and forth between. So I mean, I don't think that they're done with those characters yet, but you've read further ahead than I have. Like I had all kinds of wild theories about Joker Moon until I found out like why it was called that. I was like, maybe the Jokers are on the moon, because that's just my brain works in these simple, obvious, direct ways. I'm like, gotta bring him back.
Like they're
there's a lot of great characters. This is not her first appearance, but Patchwork makes an appearance in this book, and this is the thing, another interesting Joker related power, not so much these overpowered aces, but just kind of like going back to that whole mind body thing. This is like a physicality, this is a physically oriented power, of literally, again, going back to the breaking apart, her body literally breaks apart.
Right.
I had a great time, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me okay, wait. So yes, thank you. So there we go. So Greg very shrewdly said some thank yous right at the last second as we were watching the clock run down. I guess I have some old version of Zoom that only lets you record for a limited amount of time. And then I tried to upgrade it. It was like, oh, if you upgrade Zoom, you can record a longer meeting. And then I tried to upgrade it, and that didn't work. So how's that for a little behind the scenes trivia? Pretty good story, right? So, so yeah, we said some thank yous real quickly there at the end, but I guess I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Greg, who I assume will watch this. A lot of fun. Hopefully anyone who has watched this, all dozen of you, really enjoyed it. So, like I say, even though there hasn't been a lot of commenting on these videos, let's put some comments on these two, and let's hear it for Greg with some really brilliant observations about wildcards. So hopefully we'll do it again. We'll just have to make the scheduling work and hope that the technology also keeps up. And so hopefully there'll be more of those. And next week, I want to. The conversation will begin about volumes 10 and 11, which are the two books that conclude the entire arc with the rocks and the jumpers and bloat and the whole Joker community on the rocks, and et cetera, et cetera. So. Sorry, it's so hard to say goodbye, isn't it? So I just keep rambling, but all good things must come to an end. So once again, thank you, Greg O'Driscoll, and we'll see you again soon, and be here next week for more Card Table. Thanks, everybody.
Doesn't have any class. She says, "Hon, what is it?" "I'm trying to visit with my pal Melinda Snodgrass. Shoot the breeze with Walter John Williams. Hang out with Howard Waldrop. I've been smarting for George R.R. Martin. His characters have so much pop. I like to go out dancing. My baby loves a bunch of authors. My heart's broken several places. Baby's just sitting there reading about aces."